தமிழரின் பிம்பம் உங்கள் TVI.
Welcome to CrossRoads on TVI, a show that showcases the Tamil Canadian community, their issues and their successes. I'm your host, Manjula Selvarajah. Today on our show, we will be talking about relationship abuse in our community with a panel of experts and speak to a representative from a Tamil Canadian conference on advances in science, medicine and engineering. This is a conference that's happening right now this weekend. Let's start with our panel discussion. Is there a high level of acceptability in our community for relationship abuse? Why does such abuse take place? Why do the recipients of such abuse suffer silently? Let's hear what our panel has to say. Soosai Rajendiram works with the Tamil Partner Abuse Response Program. He's a case coordinator with Family Services Toronto, a United Way member agency, and one of the city's oldest non-profit social service organizations. Jothi Ramesh is a Toronto-based registered social worker with over 17 years of experience as a psychotherapist. In the area of couple counseling, she works on issues from communication through to pre-marital counseling and partner abuse. Ines Indrakumar is the operations manager at the Canadian Tamil Youth Development Centre, a non-profit organization dedicated to youth empowerment in the Tamil Canadian community. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure having you here. So Ines, let's start with you. I mean, it's a conversation we had that got me thinking on this topic as well. You had mentioned to me earlier that your youth outreach workers had been called in to some schools. You don't have to mention which schools, but schools, because they were noticing some relationship abuse issues with Tamil Canadian students at the schools.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So CanTed currently works at, we do, lunchtime and after school drop-ins at schools in Toronto, about 6 to 8 schools. The school that actually called us in is a school in Markham. And these are issues that the principal noticed was going on with Tamil students. And that's why she particularly called CanTed in. And these were instances that both the teachers and the principal had picked up around the school. There were things in classrooms, videos on surveillance. And it was things, kind of severe, from physical abuse to verbal abuse, boyfriends hitting the girls, telling them to do their homework. And so CanTed went in. What we did was we separated the boys and the girls. We had our female outreach worker working with the females and our male outreach worker working with the males. And I think what we found and what we thought was disturbing was that a lot of the girls didn't think anything was wrong with that. They thought it was normal, or it just happened once, or he just does that when he's mad. And it was very hard for us to actually get to these girls and help them understand. And mind you, we only were there for about 4 months. So all of this engagement and this education had to take place within the 4 months.
Okay.
And on top of that, I think what was even more difficult was that the administration didn't have any cultural sensitive training. And so what they were doing was informing the parents about what's going on, which this escalated the issue. And then it was even more difficult for our outreach workers to gain the trust of the girls and for the girls to open up. Eventually, we took them in, we put them into some of our other programs, and we're still continuing to work with them. But I think it's an issue and it's a problem that probably takes about a year and more to actually educate these girls and help them understand where the problem is and how they can resolve and how they can help themselves.
And you bring up a interesting, I find it interesting that they actually called you because you are an organization that, as opposed to just calling in sort of a random organization, they called an organization that has Tamil Canadian youth outreach workers.
Right, exactly.
And that takes me to a question with the group that you work with, and I think it's called the Tamil Partner Abuse Response Program, specifically again targeted at this community. Can you tell us about that program?
Yeah, see, Family Service Toronto, I think for a long time we are having this POWER program. It's called Next Steps program. This program is funded by MAG, Ministry of Attorney General. This is a government supported program. We have various groups, like 7 groups, like English groups and language specific groups. Among the language specific groups, we have 2, Tamil and Farsi, Farsi speaking group. The clients normally, when they abuse their partners and dependents, children, and then when they get arrested, and then they will, after getting arrested, they will be incarcerated, and then they will go to courts. From the courts, the judge or the court sends them to our program, and then that's one set of people. Another set of people, they go to courts, and then they are placed under a probation officer. So the probation office send the clients to us. These 2 sources we get the clients, from the courts directly and from the probation officers. So they are mandated clients. They have to come. So we don't need to, we don't do any outreach to get those clients, but they are mandated. So according to the law,
it's almost like you're kind of, you're dealing with them closer to sort of the end of the line when they're engaged with the law already.
Really. So when they get into the law, and then as a sort of an extension of the law itself, they come to the group. But many of them, when they come with a lot of resentments, say various kinds of resentment.
Resentment that they're actually in the legal process?
Yeah, the legal process, as well as resentment towards women. And then some of them, initially they feel, oh, this is the only charitable aspect of the whole system of the law. They just go through lot of hassle through the law itself, and then they come to the program. So we have 16 sessions, 2 hours weekly. This is a group therapeutic counseling groups. So we all sit in, and then we just do the counseling as a group. Here in this process, we really facilitate the group, and there is a male female couple. That's the dynamism that we have. So there is a male counselor and a female counselor, and they co-facilitate and animate the group.
So that's interesting that there's one thing both of you have mentioned, and that is, you mentioned it, and you mentioned the fact that it was generally girls, girls, and you also happened to mention that it was girls that were the recipients of the abuse, and you sort of hinted at that too. So Jothi, I'm directing this to you, and this actually, we put this question up, this topic up on our Facebook page, and we got a couple of comments, and Doreen Ignatius, a writer on our Facebook page, had this to say. She said, so there was a debate that went on our page about, is it, 99% apparently of the abuse that's committed is committed by men, but we should also recognize that men can be recipients, and this is what she had to say. I would not oppose the statement that the majority of abuse victims are women. However, I believe that we should also acknowledge that men can also be the victims. Although abuse against and violence against men is not as prevalent as it is for women. So Jothi, what I was, we've been talking about it, and we've mentioned that women are sort of the victims or the ones that are targeted. Perhaps we can get you to kind of expand that definition of who could be the recipient of abuse.
It could be anybody. I know its prevalence is with women, but men could be abused, children can be abused, elders are abused, the seniors, pets can be abused, anybody could be a victim, right? So I think there's a lot of work and services and for gender-based violence because of the prevalence. I guess that's what it is.
And the other one that I heard of, as you were saying about seniors as well, is that the other one I've heard of or spoken to even women that have faced it from sort of in-laws or things like that. So sometimes it's also women on women.
Yeah, women on women.
And then we also have same-sex
partners having abuse in a same-sex relationship, right?
So let's take this definition another way then. Soosai, I was hoping
Yeah.
to have you add in here. Now, when the community thinks of the word relationship abuse, we think of extreme things. We think extreme violence, we think sexual abuse, but actually it's a broader definition. Sometimes it's even things that are kind of milder than that. So can you expand that definition for us?
Before just going to your question, I just want to add something to what Jothi said. Yeah, so there is the same sex partners. Even we have FST now. Recently we started running a big group for them every week, and there are couples coming from the same sex. We have an LGBTQ counseling section, and there's individual counseling as well as group. They come as a couple. I mean, and then those who did abuse in their same sex, and then they come in a big number to the group counseling. Coming to your question, yeah, you are right. That I think in our community, that when we generally speak that violence, and we just speak of the physical violence, there is much more beyond the physical violence. So abuse itself, like emotional abuse, is big time is an issue. In various forms of emotional abuse itself, like say like between the partners, they just name calling, or just putting down the other person. Oh, you don't know the language, you don't know this country, you just be at home, and then just putting down, and then say the sexual violence, sexual abuse, and using children against the mother, especially in a lot of families, that they use the children against the mother just to abuse them, just putting down the mother in front of the children, and then giving some privileges or some free benefits to the children, so which the mother can't give, and then naturally turning the children against the mother.
And I would imagine from that also you have financial restrictions.
Financial
too.
and that's another big issue. Like so, you just control them by limiting the financial resources, like finding a job on herself, and then you limit. No, you don't need to work. I am the one who brings money, and you. That concept is changing, but still for all there are risks. That concept is the financial limitation, and then abuse is there, and then not allowing to work, as well as controlling the money. Okay, this amount I can give, just manage.
That's interesting. I mean, Ines, just going from there, there's one that I have heard of that perhaps you can expand on, is this idea of social restrictions, and apparently you see that more with the younger generation, where it's, you know, controlling who you're with, or perhaps you can expand on what that is.
Definitely. I think it's, you know, you see it in both males and females, definitely. And even within our organization, we notice like relationships where they control who the other person can talk to, who they can hang out with, to a point as to who can come to Cantide. I mean, if like we had a girl who comes in and her boyfriend doesn't want her to come in, she doesn't, she stops. And same way around, we have males who stopped coming in because their girlfriends didn't want them being in this open environment. And you know, I think it goes back and forth with both males and females. And the other thing, also mentioned by Soosai, I think we definitely started picking up on females verbally abusing males a lot more. I mean, the case that I mentioned before was an isolated case where the school called in after they identified it. But within Cantide, we definitely see females making comments like, oh, you know, you're not man enough to do this. Or, you know, and they completely think it's a joke. It's something that is casual conversation. But I think things like this definitely affect both males and females and in their development. And that's an issue I think Cantide will constantly deal with. And with outreach workers, it's hard for them to kind of call them out on the spot. So then we refer to these workshops where we bring this up again and have it like an open, larger discussion. But it's something that, you know, once a grade 12 graduates, they go into university, we get a new bunch of grade 9s, same issue. And I think it's something we constantly need to educate our youth on, is this respect between males and females. And so far for CanTED, we haven't dealt with like same-sex relationships in terms of issues. But I think that's definitely something we need to move towards and open it up for the youth. Yeah.
So, so let me take you to an area that I'm very curious about, because all of you work in this, have worked with this issue. Do you think, and you've also worked with the broader community, do you think that there are higher instances of relationship abuse in the Canadian Tamil community? Perhaps Jothi, I'll start with you.
I don't think so. I think it's, you know, abuse is prevalent in every community.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just there, everywhere.
Are we in agreement here?
I think I agree with Jothi for that point. So it is not exclusively for the Tamil community, it is everywhere.
Even the amount of times it happens, you think it's about similar?
I would think the statistics would be similar across.
And it has been there since the history. But among the Tamil community, it is an important issue, there's a prevalent issue, and that seems, that's the alarming side, because we can't be complacent about that. I mean, say it is growing, it is growing, and in any way we don't see a sign that it is decreasing.
Okay.
So that's the alarming thing. It is everywhere, but in the Tamil community it is going on in a very high speed, I think.
Okay.
I guess the other piece to that is also the vulnerabilities, right? You know, there could be certain differences between communities, like, you know, somebody who's grown here, Canadian born, and somebody who's immigrated here, awareness about the law, how it works, and so how it's reported. There could be differences in those statistics, but if you look at the prevalence, I would be surprised if there's any difference. Yeah.
And that's interesting. I mean, we were talking about with the youth, I mean, perhaps you can talk about, you know, we were talking about the whole sort of Chris Brown Rihanna story, which is this famous sort of couple. You know, you can talk about that a little, because the question I put to her was, do you think with the younger generation and in the schools that you work with, that the Tamil community has more instances than with youth than other communities? And I don't know if you want to add to that.
To be honest, I don't think there is. There isn't where we think it's either more, you know, increasing in the Tamil community, but I think it's there. It's definitely there. And I think the other issue is that a lot of our youth imitate or, you know, look towards these celebrities, and there's these powerful celebrity couples that they look at. Chris Brown, Rihanna being the prime example. And it's that relationship that, you know, the physical abuse that happened and the tabloids blowing it up. I think a lot of the kids, I was actually pretty surprised of some of the conversations we had with our youth. And some of them felt that, you know, at times it was her fault. You know, maybe she did this, maybe she did that. And the fact that the tabloids were also, and I've read some of them, also, you know, mentioned that. They said, or do you think this was something that was provoked? And it's a very sensitive topic, I think, for girls. And with, you know, especially at CanTED, to have both males and females and have this conversation. And we've had several of them. And a lot of it goes back to, you know, it's their relationship. Maybe something happened, but no one understands that it's violence. It turned up into violence, and there has to be a line where it had stopped. It should never have reached this high level of violence where she was, you know, beaten and looked the way she did. And even with, I think a lot of the other females said, "Oh, did you know she did hit him back? You know, he had scars." And you know, this, you know, it's not something that we find as humorous, but it's actually pretty surprising to hear these kinds of conversations take place between young, you know, 14, 15, 13-year-olds who think, you know, it's fine now because, you know, what she did was right too. She actually hit him back. And these conversations, I think, are very unhealthy when they're not supervised and when there's no, you know, guidance and, you know, debriefing about why do you feel that way? Why did you say that? Why do you think that's right? Because then what we're going to have 20 years from now is females thinking it's fine to beat up, you know, males, right?
Because it set the tone that violence is a way to...
Exactly, and I think that's what we need to stop, is that it should never end in violence. And, you know, maybe females are not always the victims, males are victims too, and being open to that. And I think that's definitely the way
Well,
to go.
I'm going to give you something to think about before we go to a break, and that is this. So you've all clearly said to me that the amount of times it happens, or the instances, is similar to the broader community. Then the discussion we're going to have when we come back is if you think our community has a higher tolerance for relationship abuse. I'm assuming your answers may be slightly different for that, but I'm curious to hear. So we're going to take a break now. You're watching Crossroads on TVI, and I'm Manjula Selvarajah. We'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to Crossroads on TVI with Manjula Selvarajah. We've been speaking about relationship abuse in our community. So Jothi, let me start with you. And I left you with the question before the break. Do you think that there is a higher level of tolerance for relationship abuse in our community?
I don't know whether there's a higher tolerance in our community, because I work with the other communities where I see women having higher tolerance towards violence as well. So I am not sure. I don't think so. But I would, what happens is probably, wanting to forgive them, or after the violence has happened and saying, oh, the way the abuser works is there's violence, and then they apologize, they say they're going to change, and then to kind of go back to it and say, okay, I'll take you back, and then the same thing happens. So that I see amongst all communities. And also, even if they find a different partner, there is that similar kind of a profile that they go into another partner who could be abusive as well.
Similar,
and that's not because they like the abuse, but there is a strong need to say that maybe I'll do it differently this time. And there is unresolved issues from the previous abuse and whatever trauma they have experienced, and there is hope that they'll do it differently. But because it's unresolved, you can't act it out in the new relationship or with the same person again. You need to have a closure to that. That I feel, because of the stigma related to counseling, that you might not have a lot of victims seeking help.
I see.
So
Soosai, I don't know if you want to, if you have a point to add to that, because my sense is that, and this is just a sense, that in the community, I wonder if there is a tolerant attitude towards partner abuse. It's just a wonder.
Yeah. See, other than the work I do with the men, so I'm also living in the community. So I come across various type of people in the community, and then families, interact with families. In my other work too, I just interact with the families. Then the reported cases, the percentage, it looks for me, maybe it's a personal thing, I don't know how far research is done on that. The small percentage is only the reported ones. So there are a lot of things, it goes unreported. And there, a lot of them, for various reasons, which Jothi also mentioned, say like they don't report, or they don't take any steps to resolve, or just come to the system to find a way to get out of this one because of other family issues.
Why is that? Why do you think?
See, like,
why is it that they don't? So they recognize that this is not what I want. Okay.
And they put up with that.
Yeah.
See, like.
So what do you think the barriers are?
There's one of them. See, like, oh, if I take an action of just call the police, and then my partner will get arrested, and they know the consequence of that one, and then and then I know I can't live with this. If I get separated, and then whole of my relatives and the family members will blame me. Not only that, even my sisters who are not married, they will not get married. I know a number of cases. They say to me, oh, so I can't call the police, even though it is very dangerous for me to live with person, but I can't call because I have 2 more sisters, and my parents will back home. That is in Sri Lanka, but still for all, and no, it's very difficult to get them into marriage. So I will try to put up with that. So that sort of thing is there, and there are the social stigma which little broader than that one. the relatives and everybody will say bad about me, so I just stick on. But there are people, they come out of this whole notion of stigma too nowadays. I see that one too.
Interesting, because I think I'm also trying to figure out if there are, obviously, when you look at abuse, I know that sometimes it could be sort of the social environment that you're brought up in that might make you an abuser. It could also be that you might have individual traits that may make you an abuser. I'm wondering if there are community-specific factors. And this is a tough question, because I know that this will be very critical of the community when we say this. Do you think that there are cultural or community-specific factors that may lead to people abusing? Ines?
I definitely do think so. Especially if you look at the community and look at the female, even their support system is usually their mother, or their mother-in-law, or their sisters, and even like in Sri Lanka, while they're cooking, it's a group of women cooking together. That's when they start talking about these female issues, and I think it's a community issue, because a lot of the females tell their, whether it's a newlywed or the mother-in-laws telling their daughter-in-laws that one of the traits or one of the qualities of a good female or a good wife is forgiveness. And I think that's where the miscommunication is because definitely I believe in forgiveness, and I think as individuals, as human beings, it's important, but then they don't know the fine line between forgiveness and then when is a point when I stop, or when do I say this is enough, I don't need to be treated this way. But I think in terms of youth, like if I can comment on that, through our women, like we have Amam Nanam, like mother-daughter cafes. But through that, what I was really impressed with, and I think as young Toronto females, I think a positive change that I see is that a lot of the mothers are now saying, that's not something that I want for my daughter. I want my daughter to be in a healthy relationship. I mean, accepting the relationship is one thing, and I think we've come to a point where parents are like, maybe my 17-year-old does have a boyfriend, but I still want her to focus in education. And now they're actually opening up and saying, I want her in a healthy relationship, which I think is a huge step for the Tamil community here.
Okay. Yeah. So Jothi, I'm going to push a little further from the point that she's made, and you're welcome to add to that. But I'm just curious if there is any sort of generally you can say that some people say that South Asian communities may have more male-dominated structures. Do you think that definition can be extended to the Canadian Tamil community? And if so, do you think it affects this issue?
I think that we are a paternalistic society, right? The South Asian culture is like that. And I think that has an impact on the gender and the changing gender roles now, right? I think that's where it's becoming an issue, because women are more emancipated and more, so that is causing conflicts, and that could be one of the various reasons. But also the other point that I want to add to what Ines is saying is the war, the war trauma. There are studies that shows that war trauma affects and is a predictor of domestic violence, both towards children and spouse. There are studies that have shown that. There's a study in Australia. And there are other, factors also, the kind of the social, even the environment at home, like the male roles and the boys, the children, right? Where the boys, if you have a daughter and a son, and the kind of rules that apply to both, the kind of chores that's allocated to both is different. So you're creating this environment at home even where the gender roles are specified differently. I know there are differences, but still to taking it extremely and then people buying into that and becoming that. So that is another part of it as well, I think, and there's also the family structures are fractured now, because of how people have emigrated. Particularly I'm talking about the Sri Lankan community, where the women come in, they start working, and maybe 5-7 years later the man comes and is unable to find a job, and the woman is the breadwinner now and has learned some English. The children have started and they are speaking English and they are more integrated with the community, and it's changing the gender roles.
Yeah, it's a role reversal.
It's a role reversal. So I'm not condoning this and giving excuses, but I'm looking at all the various factors that's contributing towards this, right?
Interesting. And I mean, that's actually several good points that you've made, and I saw you nodding right through that to say. So, I mean, perhaps you're recognizing some of these things. So, what would you say? Why is it that these the people that what are they telling you? What are the reasons that are driving that behavior for them?
Yeah, just what Ines and Jothi said, and just add that the migration, the war, and the migrated world, then you come economic issues too, and the role of the family as well as gender roles. The family is itself. I mean, if it is in Sri Lanka, there is a supportive extended family system is there to support in a different in every way, whether you go wrong or right, then there are people to guide you and support you as the extended family. That scenario is very lacking here, because people become individualistic, and even the families become small units, and then money is the most important thing, and then they run after money to buy houses, and then that creates a lot of issues.
And the pressures add up.
The economic issues also is but as far as the men I see, and when I analyze the male dominated thinking pattern, that is there in every culture. Every culture is there, but in our society it plays is a big role, I think. The way that man controls, and I am in control, I am the captain of the ship, and then when the gender issues, then women comes and start working and then try to say, okay, I have the equal right, and that becomes an issue for the man who has been, it's a learned behavior right from those people mostly born in Sri Lanka, and now they are the generation, I mean the first generation here. It's an issue for them to just recognize the equal cry of the woman. I mean, their partners. No. My mother and grandmother, they were like this, and so he himself, he indirectly, subconsciously accept that sort of role, and then there becomes a conflict. And just to see, like, see this, even the men without themselves knowing it is there in their subconscious, that male dominated thinking pattern. I think that's the main issue for a lot of problems in the family relationship.
Yeah, can I just add, the media doesn't help either, right? You know, where there is a huge expectation, whether it is the drama or the movies or the songs, it's like the woman is expected to be this person who just cows down and does, and she is like, you know, is people just look up to her as this person. She can be she can hold the highest position in anywhere in her workplace, but at home she has to be the person who actually falls at her husband's feet and does, you know, serves him hand and mouth, right? So that's, the media doesn't help, and this is what we are socializing our kids watching this also, right?
Got it.
And there is a little bit of complexity there, where the broader society, they are hearing something else, and they are, you know, there's a conflict there too for them in some ways.
So so let's take this, we've heard a lot here, right? And so let's take this to another direction. I'm curious what you think. I mean, there obviously is an awareness issue, right? And there obviously is an issue about sort of gender equality. There are a couple of things here. What are some of the solutions that you think the community could work on in this area? I mean, if you're telling me that you don't know if it's increasing, but it's certainly not decreasing, if the community could do something, what do you think? What are some of the solutions that you would suggest? Maybe Ines, we'll start with you and ask everyone.
I would say definitely, as you mentioned, awareness, raising awareness, and I think it needs to, in terms of the young Canadians, I think it needs to start with as young as grade 7s and grade 8s. Raising awareness. I mean, there's a lot of study and there's a lot of awareness about sexual education, but there isn't, I believe, any education on what are healthy relationships. And I think that's what we need to start with, because as young as 12, 13 are in what they call relationships, boyfriends, girlfriends. They have no idea what that means, but they're in these, boyfriend-girlfriend relationships. So I think definitely raising awareness is number one. Number two, I would think, is parents actually opening up and talking to youth about these issues. I mean, I think, again, like Jothi and Soosai commented on this, it's about that role that starts in the house, about where the mother stands, where the father stands, and where the kids are. And I think a lot of kids look at their parents for some kind of, what is a relationship? The first relationship they're exposed to are in the home between the mother and father. And sometimes, I don't think the parents do it intentionally, where, you know, they have this unequal, or whatever we may consider unequal relationship. It might be just something that the kids misunderstand, that the children misunderstand. Maybe the mother is the one, you know, doing a lot of the work, but to them they just see the mother coming home and cooking and then, you know, feeding the father, right? But behind the scenes she might have a stronger, and they might have actual very good understanding. And I think the second step for that is talking to your children about what is a healthy relationship, and being open about your relationship with your husband to an extent that you talk about, okay, you know, this is what dad does and this is what I do.
And I think, Soosai, you wanted to make a point here too. Do you have some solutions that you'd like to suggest?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really confused to say a solution right now. That basically the concept of awareness. So we have, I think, as a community, see, the Tamil community in Canada, we are growing in so many ways. See, as far as business and economy and the jobs our younger generation is holding, we are far ahead compared to many other communities that migrated to Canada. So we are good in that. But as far as the social issues like relationship, intimate relationship issues, and the awareness part is very lacking. There are so many agencies working among us, but they are doing their part in their own way in different, but coordinated awareness program we have none. I think the leading community agencies or the benevolent people in the business sector, they get into a draft program of awareness. Especially, we were trying to do some awareness seminars to men to become especially the male dominant, just to address that one and to respect their partner in an equal manner. So those things have to come up, I think. So we have to design. We have to sit down and design some awareness programs or activities among our communities to address this one.
Interesting. So I think, Jothi, we'll have to leave you with the last word. What would you suggest?
Definitely education, as Ines and Soosai are saying, in terms of education of healthy relationship, but also education about what is abuse, you know, what does it mean, you know, what is the pattern of an abuser, like when they apologize and they come back, you know, that's how they do, and how do you respond, and, you know, teaching them about how does that look like. But the other piece is also education around the legal system, how it works, because sometimes I do have clients who would say, oh, I just called the police to give him a warning, and then this has become like, I want to, and then what happens is the legal system is, you don't charge, it's the police that charges.
So it passes over to the
criminal justice system, and you can't even withdraw the charges if you think that you're just calling the police. And in no way I'm saying don't call the police, but I think people also need to understand that if you're trying to call just to give him a warning so that it doesn't become something worse, it's out of your hands.
So what are some of the early steps that you think people can take? So say, I don't know if you want to.
So when in a relationship, there are, when you see signs of abuse at the early stages, and then you have to say when in relationship words, you just exchange words, no, the words itself, if it remarks that it indicates that there is an abuse, and try to address that at that level. Explain to we used to teach men how you assertively communicate to your partner, not aggressively, assertively. Just communicate what you feel, and then if the partner is able to understand that one, you resolve that. And then if it goes little, try to find some resources and helplines. There are so many other helplines on call, or just visit the websites and find them and get help to address that issue. And if not, just get somebody to involve, some common person, this is going on, mediate. Mediate and just to resolve that. and at last stage, if you find it is really a dangerous thing, safety, if the safety of the person as well as the dependent is at stake, and then you just call, that's as a last resort, you call the police. So take those steps and then find it. And as Jothi said, it is true, I have seen so many people, they just to give him, we thought the police come and just give him a warning,
doesn't work
or or settle the issue and go on. It doesn't work.
So we probably will have to end it there. Thank you so much. That was the perfect ending to this topic, and we have a lot more to talk about. At some point we will have another conversation about what happens in the legal side of things. Thank you for coming here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure. And we'll have you on again. So we are going to take another break. You are watching Crossroads on TVI with Manjula Selvarajah. Welcome back to Crossroads on TVI with Manjula Selvarajah. This weekend at Sikh Kids, Tamil Canadian and Tamil American researchers and scientists are coming together for TASME, the 16th annual conference on technological advances in science, medicine and engineering. Gayathri Naganathan is a volunteer with TASME, a master's student in health services research at the University of Toronto, and has worked with several non-profits, including the Council of Agencies Serving South Asians and the International Medical Health Organization, IMHO, as they're well known. Her research focuses on mental health, homelessness, and racialization in Toronto. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about the conference.
So TASME itself is in its 16th year, as you mentioned, and it was put together originally by a group of Tamil researchers who just came together with the hopes of uniting, these Tamil academics that are sort of scattered worldwide, and to give us a forum to connect with each other and network and collaborate with each other. So it was originally started by Dr. Sam Thiagalingam and Dr. Nathan Yoganathan, and so together they sort of formed the initial idea. And several other researchers jumped on board. And the last several years, Dr. Naresh Palaniar at Sikh Kids Hospital has actually been the chair of the conference and has been running it very successfully there.
So what actually happened at Sikh Kids over the weekend at the conference?
So the conference, it's like any other academic conference. Everyone comes together and presents their research. And because we're from various different fields, from biomedical sciences to engineering to social sciences and health sciences, it's a very interdisciplinary conference, and everyone is presenting their research and their findings. And it's a really great opportunity to really get a different perspective on your research, because sometimes we really get trapped in our own little silos and we sort of lose perspective on what else is going on in the field. So it's a really great opportunity to get new perspectives on our ideas.
So what's been your highlight? I know that you are presenting at it, or you presented at it too. What's been your highlight so far?
So this is my third TASME conference that I've attended. And the first time that I've really gotten involved with helping out to plan. And the highlight for me has actually been, as a student, to interact with researchers who are very well established in the field, and to get that mentorship opportunity and to really get an idea of how to move forward in our careers and career development. So a whole segment in the conference was actually spent, and about an hour or so we spent just discussing career development. We had a panel of people both from academia and from industry who were sharing their experiences with us.
So if people want to, the conference has taken place this weekend, if people want to get involved or in the conference next year, what do they do?
Well, so far we've been sort of, just an event website pops up around the time that we start registration. But this year we really want to turn things around. This year we actually had a record number of registrations, and we really want to build on that success. So what we're hoping to do is keep people connected throughout the year with smaller symposiums that focus on a particular topic area of interest, and that would be hosted by different universities and hopefully
throughout the year.
Throughout the year.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And then to keep people connected that way, and then we want to establish a permanent website that would be a forum for people to come and learn more about Tamil academics in our community, and also to connect with them if they are interested in research opportunities.
So this is very interesting to me, because your organization, the conference itself, is really pushing this idea of research and academia. Now, you've told me in a conversation that we had before that you have a tough time sometimes explaining to your mom, to your family, what you do.
Absolutely.
How do you think the community regards what is the regard the community has for professional careers versus careers in research or academia?
I think research is really foreign territory for the Tamil community.
Okay.
I find that, you know, if you say you're doing your undergraduate degree, you're doing science, people understand that. If you say you're in medicine, people understand that. Engineering, so forth. But when you go into these more abstract concepts of I'm doing research on homeless people or I'm doing research in medical technologies, they really sort of get lost a little bit. And that's true of the Tamil community, but also of the broader community to some extent. In academia, we have this, this idea called the elevator concept or the elevator speech of that little 30-second explanation of your research, and we really try to promote that idea because really you can dive into your field and go into great detail and people really just get lost. So really the perception is that academia, to some degree, people feel that you're hiding from the real world in a sense. You know, you're spending more years in school, you're sort of just staying in the ivory towers of academia. But the other perception is also that it's just too abstract and it's not really something that they can, you know, understand in concrete terms.
What do you love about it? I mean, you obviously are very passionate about it. What do you love about what you do?
I think academia really gives you the freedom to pursue knowledge, you know, in its purest sense. I know it's a little bit ideological to say it in that sense, but it really gives you an opportunity to explore your interests and really pursue those ideas that you're interested in learning about. And at the same time, it gives you a degree of autonomy that you wouldn't get in a job setting. I mean, most people these days are lifelong learners. You have to be in industry and professional degrees, what have you. But in academia, you really get to choose what you want to learn and which way that discovery and that exploration goes.
Well, this is interesting because there's been a lot of news in the media with what happened out of Geneva, you know, the discovery of this particle or confirmation of its existence, let's say, and that wasn't all over media. But I remember that, I believe it was last year, it was discovered that there was an actual planet out there that could be habitable, and it was nowhere in the mainstream news. Do you think there is sort of decreasing interest in the broader community for sort of scientific research or discoveries of that kind? Do you think it's waning?
I think science in general has always been sort of the realm of the nerds. And so it's not something that the broader community really has tapped into, you know, historically speaking either. But I think, you know, with shows even like The Big Bang Theory, where you make that nerd culture more accessible, people are starting to make it becomes a bit more tangible to people, and it's growing in popularity. We're kind of embracing that culture as well. So yeah, I would say that those discoveries, the technical aspects of the discoveries, people don't necessarily care about, but a lot of people, you know, do care about the broader idea of, oh, okay, this is really cool, this is an interesting concept that's out there.
So who are the kind of people that actually attend the conference? I'm trying to, do you get people that are considering academia, or is it mostly people that actually have some kind of body of work or starting a body of work?
All kinds, actually, kind of across that entire spectrum. We have undergraduate students who are first, second, third year, just sort of beginning to explore research and what it can really become. We have graduate students who are well into their thesis work, master's and PhD level. And then we also have well-established researchers who are principal investigators who have faculty positions. And then on top of that, we also have industry leaders who are running their own independent companies in pharmaceuticals and things like that, who are also at this conference. So again, it's very diverse, not only in terms of the fields, but also in terms of the expertise of the individuals who attend the conference.
When I think of research, I mean, going on that, since you've pointed out that it could be even people who are thinking of going into academia, I mean, when you think of research, you think it's very segmented. So for example, if I was doing research in wireless technologies, I probably would just go to conferences on wireless technologies because those are the only people that will understand my research. So I'm trying to understand what the value is to go to a conference, to go to a conference that is advances in technology, medicine, and science with that little piece I may have about wireless. So what do you think the benefit is?
Absolutely, and I think a lot of people do have that hesitation of what can I gain from attending this conference. And what I would say is the one thing that really unifies everything that is presented there is this idea of health, and everyone's work somehow connects to that, whether it's at the biomedical, you know, the cellular level, or if it's at the population level. And that sort of keeps us together. But at the same time, just being able to come together and support the community and to really foster leadership and to really highlight the talents that we have in our own community. I think that capacity building component is extremely important to show, you know, young researchers and students that this is a viable career for you. Look, people in your own community have done this and have been extremely successful in this. So I think that is the true value of TASME. We do want to foster collaboration to whatever degree is possible, but I think just having those role models and fostering that leadership is really the strength of this conference.
But do you think that there's soft skills that come in very handy, like networking or things like that? Do those actually, because I think of researchers as being more focused and kind of exploring the nitty-gritty in one topic. Do you think some of those soft skills come in handy?
Absolutely.
Why and why?
Well, science, I mean, the fields themselves are becoming more and more interdisciplinary, and you see that even in the hospital setting all the way down to the actual basic sciences setting. So as much as people are sort of focused on their own work in the lab environment, they are working and collaborating with people in a variety of different fields. So those soft skills are really essential to make those connections and see where are there overlaps between our research and where can we pursue collaborative projects together.
Wonderful. Well, I'm really glad this conference is going on, and I guess it'll be the 17th annual one next year, and people can probably keep an eye out for that. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
So here are my final thoughts for the show. One of the comments on our Facebook page from a viewer, Vidya Mahendran, asked this pertinent question: even relationships that start out healthy can turn abusive. What are the signs to look for? Della Muhundaraja, a counselor with Cantide, a youth outreach worker with Cantide, shared a list of signs to look for. This is just a few from Family Services Association of Toronto. Does your partner make you feel uncomfortable by telling you what or what not to do, telling you who to be friends with, telling you what clothes to wear, telling you how to act, or making you do something that you don't want to do? Other warning signs include blames you and others for their mistakes, gets angry a lot, seems to be obsessed with you, has to be a part of everything you do. If any of this seems familiar, please contact the organizations that were mentioned on the show today for more help or more resources on this issue. That wraps up our show for today. Thank you all for joining us. You've been watching Crossroads on TVI with Manjula Salvaraja. Have a great day.
தமிழரின் பிம்பம் உங்கள் டிவி.